I'm Dave Brennan, host of the About Abortion podcast, and I want to tell you about a really exciting new resource that we're just releasing. Abortion is one of the foremost controversies of our day, and yet so many Christians and so many churches remain uninformed and confused. They still haven't considered in a systematic way what God's word has to say on this crucial issue. How are we to see the unborn child? What is abortion in God's eyes? How are we as God's people to respond? From Genesis to Revelation, our brand new series of 6 Bible studies examines abortion in the light of Scripture, enabling Christians to respond with compassion, clarity, and biblical truth. Go to Brephos.org now to download your Bible studies for free, or if you prefer, order your very own full-colour, beautifully produced booklets for you and your church or small group. Thanks for listening. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of About Abortion. Today we're looking at a question that was sent in by one of our listeners about how we can use social media most effectively in making the case for life. Now, my knowledge of social media stretched about as far as Bebo back in the early 2000s, and so we're blessed to have not just me espousing on social media, but Ruth Rawlins, who is our communications lead for CBRUK. Ruth, hello.
Hello, great to be here, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you on board. So, Ruth, we first met, must be several years, 8-9 years ago. I think you're one of the first people I met doing this work, one of the first people to join CBRUK. Do you want to just give us a very quick intro to how you came into the work? How did you come to have a heart for the unborn? And what got you involved with CBR?
Yeah, so I got involved when I did something with Christian Concern called the Wilberforce Academy. And I went along to that because I saw that they were addressing the abortion issue. The Lord had put the abortion issue on my heart, just through just seeing the lack of it being spoken about in church, in my church. And so I was excited to go along, and I met Andy Stevenson there, and they showed a video of an abortion procedure. And, just seeing that, like many of us, I went from I should do something to I can no longer do nothing. It's no longer an option. And I quickly got involved with the work of CBRUK, and here I am. And you just reminding me when we first met, I'll never forget, because you came along to a display and you were just one of the most kind of enthusiastic first time volunteers we've ever had. I remember you were straight up there speaking to everyone, and so wonderful that you're still here and doing what you're doing. So,
well, praise God. You may not know, but when I came to that display, I came sort of suspecting the worst. I thought my friend Christian had got himself involved in some kind of dodgy, far right protest, and needed to be hauled out of there. But I just found the strategy so compelling from day one. Now, before we launch into social media specific, I think it's actually helpful to pause on that point, because you mentioned there, for you, seeing abortion for yourself was something that shifted you, in your case, not from being pro-choice to pro-life. You were already pro-life, but as you put it, it shifted you from being, well, maybe something should be done, to I can't do nothing. It sort of galvanized your conviction and moved you to action. And we hear that again and again, certainly in churches where I've shown the images. That is so frequently the response. People say, I needed to see that. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know it was that wrong. Something has to be done. Everyone needs to see this. And the reason I want to pause there is there are principles which we train all our educators in, or everyone who volunteers with us in a street team or in any capacity. Going through our training, we drum certain things, don't we? And the use of imagery will hold true, won't it, in social media? The way we do our apologetics, asking good questions, telling good stories, exposing, letting the pictures do the talking, and really taking Jesus's lead in terms of what did he do? Well, he told good stories, he asked good questions, he exposed where people were coming from, and so on. So I think there are general principles which apply right across any media platform, any kind of context, arena for discussion. So for those listening in, I want to say that do get a hold of our apologetics training. We've done some of that on this podcast already. You can go to cbruk.org/join and you can get that training, and a load of that stuff, those conversational techniques will apply in the realm of social media.
Indeed.
So I just wanted to sort of put that out there before we get into more of the sort of technicality and the ways in which it's different in the world of social media. So first of all, Ruth, can you just tell us a little bit about how you personally, because obviously you're communications manager essentially for CBRUK, so you've got that kind of almost professional eye on social media, but talking about your own personal use, just tell us a bit about how you personally use social media to highlight the humanity of the unborn child, the inhumanity of abortion. How do you go about it?
Yeah, so as you say, I do oversee the CBRUK social media. But when I first got involved, I wasn't doing that for the organisation at all. And again, when I first saw the reality of abortion, started off volunteering with CBRUK, I was just compelled to share. And obviously, I got involved back in 2013, and Facebook. I joined Facebook in about 2007, when I think most people a lot of people joined. So
I was still holding out on Bebo back then.
Yeah, so we're talking, it's only been going around 6 years. And I think back then it was still more geared towards friends than now. It's a lot more towards following celebrities and things like that. But it was very much about you have your friends. And at that time, I was a youth leader, so I had a lot of youth on there, and just more direct people that I knew than randoms following me. And so, yeah, as soon as I was, should I say, awoken to the reality of abortion myself, I was compelled to share. So just as in physical life, I was taking the presentation that I wasn't necessarily a public speaker or anything, but I just was compelled to share the reality of abortion. Everyone needed to see it. I was inviting maybe 8 people at a time around my house with my friend Laura, who shared her testimony. And so we were reaching, maybe 8 people at a time. I think we reached around 100. There was this whole other platform of people that probably wouldn't come around my house, and that I was able to reach. And yeah, I found myself, particularly at the beginning, really just being quite outraged at the amount of airspace that was getting given by individuals to, and just following the media, really. I think at that time it was the Charlie Hebdo. I may have my years all wrong, but particularly stories of injustices where people had been killed. This one was terrorist, radical Islamist. And there was, everyone was changing their profile pictures to "I am Charlie Hebdo" and all of that. It was the first time I'd really seen that. And I just, whilst it was a horrific, and my, compassion went out, I really started to see, where's the outrage for the babies? Horrific, that a handful of people got killed in this. But where is the outrage for the 600 babies that are getting killed every single day in our own country? And no doubt, many of your listeners, viewers, we've all experienced this when our eyes are open to the reality of abortion. Just the hypocrisy, I don't know if that's the right word, of pointing particularly to other countries. Look what they're doing in that country, the horrific, whether it's slavery in other countries, whatever it is. And yet just this blindness to the child sacrifice and really the barbaric reality of our own society. And that's something that really outraged me, really grinded me. And so I did find myself, wisdom, or whether it's wise, and that's something that would be good to talk about, break down again later, is I found myself comparing it to these type of injustices that come up. So while everyone was talking about I am Charlie Hebdo, how horrific is this, love and prayers for people in France, which I totally get and is needed, I found myself saying, I remember this because this is one of the first posts that blew up on my social media, prayers with France, and also prayers with the 500 babies that were killed in the UK today. And yeah, that was probably the first, to abortion. I can't remember my exact words. And that was probably the first one that really blew up on my page. As those of you that have, pro-lifers in your contact, we had the handful of amens and likes by the pro-lifers that got it. But I had a barrage of, how can you say that? It's not about, we should all be talking about France. How can you just change the subject? How can you compare? That's disgusting. You're, so much. And it was very interesting. And a lot of it was actually from, I would say, more the older youth that were on Facebook. And it was quite hard to see as well, because actually at that time I wasn't really allowed to talk about the issue as a youth leader at the youth. So it was hard to see just the ignorance and blindness of them, and just the outrage they were feeling towards my comment. And not just you, there were other people, that were adults as well. And yeah, so that was the first time I saw the blow up. And I had, even a couple of friends question me privately about my wisdom. Friends who would say they were pro-life, friends who would say, as if the way I did it. And, in reflection, I don't think there was anything wrong. I don't think there was anything wrong with the way I did it. It was probably just the first time, because I think the key, and as again, what we do in our apologetics is find the common ground. So I didn't say like everyone's looking at France. France doesn't matter. I said, my prayers with France, but also, and I think that's the key, is finding the common ground. Yes, this is a bad thing. Maybe we can also look at this, because at the end of the day, it was an injustice that had happened on the same day. On the same day as this attack had happened in France, we had secretly, quietly been killing 600 children in our own land, which didn't get any publicity. So I stand by that. And yeah, so my advice would be, as you say, back to our apologetics, is always use the common ground. And we've probably all experienced this, those of us who have shared on social media, is the first time you share, and depending on what and how you share, you will get a bit of kickback from some people who are not used to it. And yeah, basically along the way, some people will leave, which is their right. They will get jarred by things that you're sharing. But other people are quietly onlooking. And this kind of is like the public square. So as much as, we read in the Bible of Jesus speaking, in the public square, they would to the temple courts, and people would ask him questions. And as he answered the questions, they were not just for the particular person who answered the questions, they were also for the onlookers as well. So it was for the crowd. He wasn't just speaking to that individual, he was also speaking to the crowd. And that's how it is on social media. It's almost like this virtual public square, and you've got an audience, and you've got a mixed audience. And, there's different ways of doing this. And, can come in a bit more detail if you want to later, between Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, even WhatsApp status, all these different platforms, all these different social medias. But you've got an audience, and within that audience, you may have some post-abortive women. Within that audience, you'll have Christians, you'll have non-Christians, you'll have aunties, you'll have close friends, you'll have, so you've got this massive mix of people. And so it's just bearing that in mind. And, perhaps back then I should have bared a little bit more in mind that I've got a whole load of youth that I'm youth leader to. And maybe I could have factored that in a little bit with my discussion that followed on from my original post. But yeah, so bear in mind your audience. And yeah, so in terms of over the years, I started off, as I said, that was one of my biggest and my first big one. And then, sharing the different things that CBR were doing. So CBR on their page, we take photos of our displays, and of course that was quite shocking the first time that people saw that. So images of the aborted baby, images of the living baby. So yeah, at the beginning, people were quite shocked. And again, we're talking about a different time, going back 12 years ago. The Just even thinking about American politics, from Trump coming in even eight years ago, has massively brought this issue much more to public debate, much more on social media, much more in the media. So back then, especially in this country, it really wasn't massively discussed. I mean, when I came into it, I didn't see anyone on social media talking
Mm.
about abortion. I didn't see anyone. I'd never really seen it discussed within my spheres. So I was almost, in my sphere, the first person talking about it, as I'm sure others who came in on socials at that time would have been. And so it's just kind of breaking that silence, really. And
Yeah.
I'm sure people, as social media has developed, new platforms have arisen, people are much more used to this, and people call it divisiveness, political sides and all that. Not that it's just a political issue, but yeah. So people are a lot more used to it now than they were, and no doubt, for listeners, and which I can touch on in a bit as well. I did a little bit of survey, market research on my followers to see, how they feel about how I share. And yeah, there was a mixture between those who do post. I asked them, do you ever post on the issue? Some said they just don't really post much. Others said that no, because it's divisive. Others said they do. So yeah, I'm sure it will be similar to your listeners today, those that, whilst they're listening to your podcast, whilst they loving and appreciate all the posts, maybe they haven't quite got to that place where they've been able to share themselves. And yeah, I just hope this discussion can help empower and encourage, and just to let you see that it is impactful. And yeah, we can reach. It's just another place to reach a lot of people, and quickly.
Yeah, I want to just capture a couple of things there before we move on, perhaps to that survey. Interesting to hear the results and other things you've learned along the way. The first is I can't remember the exact figure. I mean, again, this is some years ago, but I was actually in some evangelism training, and someone referred to Facebook numerically as the largest continent on Earth, by which they meant there are more people on Facebook than there are who live in any single continent. And so we have to see that this is where people are virtually. Of course, it's not the same as real life. And I think the relationship between real and virtual remains really important. And it's quite a dynamic thing to keep in mind. Because as an aside, I think some of the most successful social media posts that we put out at CBRUK are where we're talking with real people in the streets, or we've got a real display, picture of real people looking at a display in real life. And then that goes into the virtual world, onto social media, and its reach is multiplied. It really amplifies the message. So I think keeping those two things working together is really powerful. But yeah, we've got to see that this is an amazing arena numerically. Like you said, you had 8 people in your living room. That's fantastic. But then you can post something and reach maybe 80, maybe 800, maybe 8,000 at a different depth. It's not the same as having someone in your living room. But those two things working together, I think, is a powerful combination. But the other thing I just want to capture there is there can be an assumption, and I think this is just, in our flesh, we all probably instinctively feel like this, that if something blows up, it's been a failure. If I've offended someone, I've done it wrong. And I think that can be people's assumptions, that they're kind of waiting to find some way of saying this that isn't going to blow up. And actually the reality is, if you're going to be the only one or the first one or one of the few standing up against that tide of kind of groupthink and virtue signaling, and everyone's got the same profile pic because this is the injustice that we're all talking about today. If you're going to stand against that tide, well, just as Jesus said, if the world hated me, it's going to hate you. Blessed are you when people falsely say all kinds of things against you and so on. Just as it's par for the course for the true follower of Christ to be persecuted sometimes and hated, so it is for the social reformer. And actually, the worst thing for a social reformer is not to be hated, but to be ignored. Or more precisely, the worst thing in terms of this injustice is for the unborn child to be ignored. And that's our job, is we're ambassadors for the unborn child. So I think for those listening in, thinking, how do I do this? I want to encourage people to let go of the goal of doing it without any friction, anything blowing up. I'm not saying we go out picking fights. There is a time for tax and so on. But actually, just as the apostles turned the world upside down and there are riots in Ephesus and imprisonments and beatings and so on, it's not a fail if there's friction. Okay, so we've got to be okay with that. And as you said, people are watching from the sidelines, whether in real life at our displays or online, social media. People are looking on, and they might not say anything. Christian Hacking and I, we talk about how friends of ours, I mean, it's happened a handful of times. In fact, it happened even just recently. Friends of ours who are at school with, not Christians, never said a word online, but they've just been watching these debates and these explosions and whatever. And then maybe after several years, they get in touch saying, hey, I think you're right. I've been watching what you've been saying there, and what you're doing is right and true. So you never know who's looking on, especially on social media. And one thing I think we can say for Facebook for sure is it isn't an echo chamber. We've got to reach people who aren't thinking like us already to see an end to this injustice. And actually, Facebook is generally a real cross section, isn't it, of society, because it's the people you grew up with, it's your friends, your family, just acquaintances, colleagues, maybe. Whereas other platforms may suffer more from the kind of echo chamber effect because it's all about who you choose to follow. But Facebook, I think, is a real cross section of people's social worlds, and in that sense, it's a valuable place to be bearing witness. But yeah, tell us, Ruth. So what tell us a bit more. Perhaps we can go for the survey now. What did you glean from that? And what other lessons have you learned along the way? Give us tips. Be really specific. Here are things that work well. Here are things to be avoided. This is a waste of time. This is a pitfall. Avoid this. This is really impactful. Give us some tips for people to implement.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to what you said. The different platforms do have slightly different, targets, personalities, even ages. So as you say, Facebook, you've got a lot of more personal friends and that, although it still is moving a little bit more towards who you follow. Instagram, still people follow their friends. They still do. You've still got a group of people that will see your stories, see your posts. TikTok, younger audience. And think something about TikTok is the algorithms. They, especially when you first join, I was having a conversation with Christian about this, is actually they put it out to a lot of people as well. So it depends on what you, our listeners, are going for. If you're actually wanting to proactively start something and speak on this issue, then you might set up a specific page on TikTok or Instagram if you want to reach slightly younger audience. However, if you're just in terms of this is my page, this is my personal page, Facebook, even WhatsApp status. Can't forget the power of a WhatsApp status is people who've got your phone number who may look at those is and you may be sharing other things, but you just want to share the odd thing. So each platform has its perks and strengths. So you've got to think about what it is that you're looking to do. So in terms of, I just put this survey out only yesterday, and I just wanted to see. So basically, I asked, have posts that I've shared, and I specified it was only to my personal people who follow me personally, as opposed to the official CBR UK. And I asked, have my posts helped to inform you about any of the following. And I listed, the humanity of the baby in the womb, the reality of abortion, and a list of other things as well: church biblical views, the laws, help for women in challenging pregnancies and support after abortion. And 88% said that they had been informed about the reality of abortion, 66% the humanity of the baby, and also 66% for the law surrounding abortion and Christian biblical views. Interestingly, for me, for only 44% said that they've been informed about support available after abortion and help for women in challenging pregnancy. So that now says to me that actually I need to do a bit better on that. And just while I raise that as well, I think, again, thinking back to who is seeing your post, especially when it's something, like, especially if it's the first few times that you're showing maybe the aborted baby, or maybe it's what I do a lot is, if it's stories, I may show an image or something and highlight, say I'm highlighting an abortion procedure or justice, or just sharing one of the CBRUK's posts. I may then follow up on the next story or in the comments, if it's Facebook, with if abortion has affected you in any way, then please visit postabortionsupport.com and put a link there. So, because it just shows you we're not just exposing this as an evil, like, because at the end of the day, if there's someone in your circles who has had an abortion and this is the first time they're seeing it, this is the first, it's going to cause grief, it's going to cause pain. So you want to not just expose the evil. And this is something that we do in CBR as well on the streets. We have a leaflet that gives post-abortion support in there. Yeah. So we want to give them the solution as well, for which is, at the end of the day, is the gospel. And so sometimes I'll do a link to PACE following it, post-abortion support, and other times I may just do a personal, got a little bit of a gospel message. I'll just say, look, if abortion has affected you, there is hope and there's healing in Jesus. And so depending on what's on my heart at the time, so that's just a reminder. And so me seeing that stat that less people have been informed about the support after abortion just tells me that maybe I can just do a little bit better on that. Because we just want, if the stat is correct that 1 in 3 women have had an abortion in their lifetime, then there's a lot of hurting women. There's a lot of women who are suffering, and men as well as fathers to these children. So, we know that abortion is a gospel issue, and it's something that people are going through. It's impacting our society. So not only by sharing on the issue are you able to expose abortion, be a voice for these babies and for the mothers, but you were able to now present in a real life situation the solution, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I think sometimes, a lot of the time on social media, we can abstractly just put the gospel out there. If anyone is, call out to Jesus. But, once, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but as we found, and I'll never forget you saying that, Dave, as an evangelist, when you joined us, you used to do street evangelism, didn't you? But you said that you found that actually having an issue, a real deep life issue that is affecting society, actually makes it easier to preach the gospel with people, because you're dealing now with real life issues. And it's exactly the same, I would say, on social media. So just a great encouragement there. Shall I continue with the survey, or
I'll just
any
make
other
a real quick comment.
specifics?
I think what you said is very helpful in terms of, in real life communications, we see people's faces, and it's much easier to think about the whole picture, their response, what they might need. The danger, of course, being a keyboard warrior, is you don't see the faces, you don't think of people, and you can be very abstract. So you can just, I've got one point to make and I'll make it. And we don't see the bigger picture. So, it's simple, but just remembering there are people on the other side of these posts, and just try and reach, don't the classic. Don't win the argument and lose the person. We've got to try and
100%.
think about the
Yeah.
holistic picture. Yeah, do
Yeah,
crack on.
definitely. No, that's an excellent point to make. And so yeah, so I just asked, what type of things are helpful, and things that about the way that I post on social media. So people said things like, in their own words, comparison to similar historical injustices against people. So whilst for the post I mentioned earlier relating to what happened in France with the Charlie Hebdo, which was a very live issue, which can be very helpful actually when people are talking about things. It can be helpful to compare it to something that's happening right now. Lucy Letby was another one where babies were getting killed. Take these opportunities, and some people were very gifted at doing this. So take these opportunities to, this is horrific. What else is horrific that few people are speaking, the news isn't reporting on? So I think these are great opportunities. But yes, also past social injustices. And everyone looks back and, I hope that if I was alive in the times of insert historical injustice, the Holocaust, slavery, whatever it is, I hope that I would have been one of the ones that spoke out. And we like to think that we would have. But what's happening in this unpopular injustice that people are not wanting to speak about because it goes against the grain of mainstream narratives, namely media, government, all of this, education. And so yeah, it can be quite helpful to, as one of my followers has said, to compare it to historical injustices. And again, as Dave said, look on our website, CBRUK.org website. We have a lot of training, our articles. We really do look into the work of and learn from the history of social reform, particularly in exposing injustice. And so, yeah, you're just a case of taking all of this stuff and improving your knowledge, like everything. If you're going to go and do a talk, if you're going to be on the streets on one of our displays, we need to increase our knowledge on the topic. So increase your knowledge so that when it comes to things you're going to post, maybe you're going to create. And yeah, that's important to think about. There's different ways of sharing on social media. It may be that you're creating your own post. It may be that you're just simply sharing one of our posts or another pro-life organization's post, or it may be that you're engaging in discussion, maybe on Facebook or X, and you're doing, as Dave touched on earlier, you're actually doing the apologetics with someone who may have reacted to a post. And we get people doing that all the time on CBR UK's posts. So we'll post something, and then we just, particularly on Instagram actually at the moment, we leave people to just discuss. So one very big example there was a video. We actually just clipped it from a popular podcast, and it was a lady saying basically she doesn't care if babies feel pain. It doesn't matter to her, because it's of no real value to her when they're just a blob. And this is one of our biggest actually viewed videos on social media, on Instagram, sorry. Facebook, I think we've had a 1.5 million views, and that was with Stacey Solomon testimony. But with this particular one, it's got about 105,000, and yeah, just it's created such a discussion there. People are like, wow, I can't believe she said this, heartless, and all of that. And again, it's really getting many people starting following us. It's just creating that discussion as again in the public square. So this stuff is all really useful, and it's particularly the really outrageous stuff. Again, you're just listening to a conversation, a little clip from a podcast. So share these. You never know who of your friends and followers just by watching that small clip. And it's the extreme, they'll be like, oh, wow, I don't want to be like that. That's extreme. And then the more and more people see, as we see involved in the pro-life movement, that those who really support abortion, they are very extreme. It's not this so-called pro-choice, middle of the range, we're neutral. It's like, no, actually the pro-abortion position is barbaric, and sometimes they'll say it out loud. So yeah, so I just keep encouraging you, follow us on all of our platforms, follow other pro-life organizations. Live Action doing fantastic, one of the best, to be honest, in America. And just, it's so simple to just share it on your Instagram status. Just retweet it. Just, you never know who it's going to reach. And people, even if no one likes it, thumbs up or comments, it's always the quiet one. People see these things. People see these things, and it's just giving them something to think about. So don't, just really encourage you in that. So yeah, I mean, I won't go into all of the list. It was very helpful to me, and I'll take it personally, and I'll take it for CBRUK as well. In terms of, is there anything, I also asked, is there anything unhelpful about the way I share about abortion on social media? A lot of people said no, keep it coming. No. Someone said, I'm not sure. I think some of the images I've seen of aborted fetuses are shocking, but I guess that's the point. So yeah, so just a few different things. Yeah.
That's helpful. I think it's interesting. The feedback you've gotten from this survey is obviously more instructive and helpful than what you think you can see directly on social media. People's reactions often, we're so tempted to think, okay, I'm in a debate, I'm in an argument, whether in real life or on social media, I've got to win this, and then that's a win. But actually, I think we need to change our sights quite dramatically. It's more about putting a pebble in people's shoes, or even throwing in a holy hand grenade and just getting people to question their assumptions. They never thought like that before. And they might be offended, and simultaneously their minds are being challenged. I mean, that's usually what causes offense. The people might blow up at the idea that there's some comparison between this and the slave trade, or how dare you change subject? But underneath that, what's niggling them is, oh, hang on, there really is a comparison here, because they're babies, they're innocent human babies being killed. So I think if we change our sights from, okay, I'm trying to win this argument, to more, I want to get people to think afresh, challenge their thinking, make it uncomfortable, actually, put a pebble in their shoe, throw a hand grenade in there. And I don't need to be the one to then actually, finish off the job. Let them debate it amongst themselves and play the long game. I think people watch and they listen and they don't always say anything. But over the years, they see your integrity, your consistency, and they might never give you the gratification of letting you know, but people will be listening. So I'd far rather people were putting stuff out there, getting the images out, stories, questions, comparisons, stirring it up, and don't worry too much about whether it looks like a win in the short term. As long as we're showing the truth and doing it with grace, it's going to be bearing fruit. And it's one of those things where we don't necessarily see it, but it will be doing good.
Indeed. And it's Ruth, like the gospel. I was going to just add to that. It's like the gospel, you're sowing seeds, one sows, another waters, and it's like handing out tracts, but virtually it's like handing out. So it's and just one thing I just did want to add is that I forgot to say, one of the questions was, how have my posts overall impacted your views on abortion? And the categories were more opposed to abortion, more supportive of abortion, completely changed my mind from supporting to opposing, and no impact. And I was just encouraged to see that 66.7% said they were more opposed to abortion. 11% said they were more supportive of abortion. No one said they, just from what you just said, no one said they completely changed my mind from supporting to opposing abortion. And 22 said no impact. And, that's fine. I'm happy with that. Obviously, I'd love to hear you completely changed my mind. I'd love to hear that. Now, there's potentially there is someone out there that has, they didn't happen to do this survey. But the fact that 66% are more opposed to abortion, because it's not just about those who are completely pro. It might be that someone's still pro-choice, but you've made them feel a little bit more uncomfortable about it. It may be that someone was already pro-life, but actually you've made them even more mobilized. So it's just strengthening these views.
Yeah. And that's helpful because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Yes. Again, we don't necessarily clarify our metrics and our and well, what's actually our purpose. Like you said at the beginning of this conversation, we start with just a conviction, like I've just got to go out there and show this, and that's good. That's the right conviction. But if we're going to be strategic, what are we actually trying to achieve here? We're not just trying to sound off. We're not trying to even share an opinion, really. We're trying to challenge and change people's thinking on this issue, and that's what it's all about. And I think galvanizing the quiet pro-lifer to be emboldened is actually a really important thing. Yes, we want to see totally changed minds, but actually we also need to be building the army. And I think courage begets courage, and the more people see the position articulated convincingly and graciously, the more they're emboldened to join their voice to the cause. And the more voices we have, the more we can get the message out there. So that's absolutely the purpose. It's to move everyone somewhere along that journey more towards being firmly opposed to the injustice and a clearer voice for the unborn. So that's really helpful. Ruth, we're going to have to draw stumps there, unless there's anything else you want to throw in before we close off.
Yeah, if I could just end with a quick story, if that's all right. Just an encouraging one. Just as I said, I used to be a youth leader, and I wasn't able to talk about the issue to my youth, unfortunately, tragically. But I remember being on a display, and I saw one of the youth actually, and actually, again, tragically, he shared how one of the other young people, a boy, his girlfriend had an abortion, and that really broke my heart. And I asked him what he thought about abortion, as we do on our displays. And this young guy said, "Oh yeah, no, I think it's wrong." And I said, "Have you ever seen it before? Standing there with an aborted baby banner." He said, "Oh yeah, I already saw it. I saw it online." He said, "When you were in that viral video," because there had been a viral video going back a year or so. And again, what we touched on earlier, I felt awful after that video because people were hating us and all that, because it was a pro-abort woman that come and shouted at us, and she was being praised and we were being hated. However, that when I say viral, millions of people saw that video, and that young person had seen that video. So that young person, who I had not been able to speak to as a youth leader in youth club, he was on YouTube. And he saw this video, and in the background of the debate that was happening in front, and in the background was an image of an aborted baby. And that was enough for him to say, "No, I don't support abortion because I've seen it." So again, you could be one of the people that shared that video that allowed someone to see that. It's so simple. And as tragic it was that his friend had an abortion, I was also encouraged that being on he'd seen that video and seen the image through social media.
Amazing.
And again, to everyone, please follow us on all of our platforms. We're on Instagram at CBRUK, Facebook, TikTok, X. All the links are on our website as well. And please do share. And if you would like to collaborate with us in any way, perhaps you're great on social media, you're doing your own thing, you've got a platform, then get in touch with us through our email or through our socials. Love to work with you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ruth. And do let us know how you get on. If you try some of these things out, let us know how it goes. Again, not that you necessarily see the fruit immediately or ever, but sometimes you will get a sense. Let us know how you get on. Let's just go out there, share the message. In the words of Paul, become all things to all men, so that by all means we might save some. Use whatever platform we can to get the word out. And you never know, it might change a heart, a mind, it might save a life. Thank you, Ruth, for joining us today. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you again next week. God bless.